Good evening, everyone. I would like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you to those attending in person tonight and those staying engaged by watching our recording on YouTube at a later date and time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the hall on the table and turn it in to Recording Secretary Kim Coven, seated to my left on the end. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. Before we dive into tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those at the table with me tonight. To my right, Superintendent Degner, Directors Pilcher Hyatt, Eastham, Vice President Williams. To my left, Directors Clausen and Finch, and Recording Secretary Kim Coven. Our newest director, Molly Abraham, was unavailable tonight, but she will be back at our first meeting in October. With that, we will dive into tonight's agenda. First topic of discussion is the Education Showcase.
Yeah, so I'm going to introduce Fred Newell, and I think Priscilla's here to help too, Priscilla Culp. And so we're going to welcome them up to the microphone here to talk a little bit about Community Cares and some of the work they've been doing. Also wanted to give a special shout out to Fred for being named to the 40 under 40 here in the community. So congratulations to him. And these have been two folks that we've welcomed onto our equity team here recently and are excited about the work they're leading. And so we're excited again for them to have the opportunity to speak to you a little bit tonight about some of the work they've been up to.
Congratulations, Fred.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Frederick Newell. My role here in the district, I'm the Inclusion and Outreach Coordinator, and this is one of my team members.
Good evening, everyone. Priscilla Culp, Diversity and Equity Coach here in the district this year.
So at the end of last school year, we was having some issues within some of our schools, and our team created this idea, what if we can bring our community into our schools to, number one, to see how amazing some of our schools are, as well as to kind of just be a support to some of our students. So we created the Community Cares Crew. For those who don't know what that is, we just have basically community members who are trained, and then she'll talk a little bit about the training that we're giving for that. And then they are support in the morning. They can support students at lunch, and then we have a crew that supports students at the end of the day by supporting them to kind of say, hope you had an amazing day, kind of helping them to get to the bus or get off school campus. And also through that, we also have created some partnerships with University of Iowa Athletics, who's going to be doing some of our community cares. And we're looking for more volunteers, so if there are people that's interested, the times for elementary schools is from 7:25 till about 8:15, and then at the middle school, high school, and we're not at high schools yet, but we want to be, at the middle school, it is about from 8:15 to 9:15 a.m.
So, and our goal for Community Cares Crew is to have a representative in every school, elementary, junior high, and high school. And for the training, it's 2 layers, cultural proficiency training, the part that I do, and then Fred does the second part of the training. You want to talk about it?
Which is just de-escalation. So one of the things we make very clear is our volunteers are not there to support behaviors, but just in case something was to happen while they were working with the student, that we give them some tools to be able to de-escalate a situation.
And the ultimate goal for our volunteers is to establish relationships with students. We know that every student needs a champion. So if that champion is not a staff in the building, it can be someone from the community.
So if you all don't have any questions, that's all we have.
Thank you so much. I had one question. Currently, how many Community Cares volunteers does the program have?
So we have 20 people that has been trained, and then only 10 of those are active. And the 3 schools that we have Community Cares Crew at is Northwest, Southeast, and Lucas Elementary. So our goal is we want to be in all of our schools, but we have to continue to recruit volunteers to be able to support that.
And I know they had mentioned the University of Iowa having some interest in partnering with us. We'd heard directly from the women's basketball team about being very motivated to trying to help with this effort. And so I know there's some further opportunities they're continuing to work on there too. And also wanted to give a shout out to Laura Gray, who's not with us tonight. Thankfully, it's her birthday, so I don't think that's the reason she's not with us, but it's a secondary benefit for her, but for Laura's leadership in this effort too, but especially Fred and Priscilla have been leading a lot of this work. So we just hope to keep growing that. I know I've talked to a lot of you guys individually about our ability to recruit and try to help maintain some volunteer presence in our school buildings. So definitely one we wanted to highlight this evening about trying to get that off the ground. Fred did a nice job connecting it back to where this kind of started the conversation from last year.
Are there additional questions or comments from
I
board
just
members?
would just like to say I really appreciate the work Fred and Priscilla you're doing. And for the community's information, I think this notion arose from a meeting that was held at Northwest last year. And that meeting was also organized by community members too. So to me, getting community folks involved in the school system like you're doing is really a great thing for all of us, especially students.
Great. Well, thank you both. Oh, did you? Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Next on our agenda is community comments. Speakers are reminded that they will be given 4 minutes to speak before I reclaim the floor. Time will be displayed on the bottom of the screen to my left. And tonight's first speaker will be Joseph Dobrian.
Joseph Dobrian, 1015 2nd Avenue. I've not addressed you for several months because I was dumbfounded by Mr. Easton's assertion, with which the rest of you apparently agree, that the statement of scientific fact ought not to be tolerated either here or in the classroom. If school boards all over America take that attitude, public education is dead in this country. I'm speaking today to warn you that not merely this district, but American public schools in general are working toward the destruction of our civilization. This was made more manifest than usual in recent weeks with the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the various tributes and ceremonies that followed. The late Queen, for 96 years, set an incomparable standard for personal conduct. Those who mourned her death and those who tried to denigrate or dismiss her legacy both did so on account of what she stood for: grace, dignity, duty, decorum, order, tradition, and above all, humility. Public schools all over this country too often instill contrary values in the children they are entrusted to educate. Too many schools are in the business of teaching grievance, intersectional hostility, pride, narcissism, premature sexualization, sexual confusion, the importance of narrative over fact, the basic wickedness of Western civilization, the very civilization that the late Queen did so much to uphold. The best I can do to warn you that we are on a disastrous course is to read you a poem that Rudyard Kipling wrote to do exactly that. It's called Recessional. God of our fathers, known of old, Lord of our far-flung battle line, beneath whose awful hand we hold dominion over palm and pine, Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. The tumult and the shouting dies, the captains and the kings depart, still stands thine ancient sacrifice, an humble and a contrite heart. Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. Far called, our navies melt away, on dune and headland sinks the fire. Lo, all our pomp of yesterday is one with Nineveh and Tyre. Judge of the nations, spare us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. If, drunk with sight of power, we loose wild tongues that have not thee in awe, such boastings as the Gentiles use, or lesser breeds without the law, Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. For heathen host that puts her trust in reeking tube and iron shard, all valiant dust that builds on dust, and guarding calls not thee to guard, for frantic boast and foolish word, have mercy on thy people, Lord.
Thank you. Next, we have Leslie Carpenter.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Carpenter, and I'm here today on behalf of the Johnson County Group of Moms Demand Action for Gun Senses in America, as you can probably gather from my shirt. Gun safety is on the ballot in Iowa this year, and voters will consider a constitutional amendment that states, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." The sovereign state of Iowa affirms and recognizes this right as a fundamental individual right. Any and all restrictions of this right shall be subject to strict scrutiny. Strict scrutiny is not in the U.S. Second Amendment. Strict scrutiny is what makes this amendment very different and very extreme. So what is this strict scrutiny, and how will it potentially change things? Strict scrutiny requires that a judge determine that a challenged law furthers a compelling government interest and is narrowly tailored to achieve that interest. The gun lobby claims that strict scrutiny amends restore the right to keep and bear arms, when what they really do is threaten public safety laws, forcing judges to apply this highest judicial standard when analyzing firearm-related laws. This standard is not required by the Supreme Court's recent decision. Only 3 other states have a similar version: Alabama, Louisiana, and Missouri. All 3 of these states rank in the top 5 for the highest rates of gun deaths in the United States. Iowa is currently 38th. In Louisiana, after strict scrutiny passed, a convicted domestic abuser challenged the constitutionality of a state law prohibiting possession of a firearm by people convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence crimes. After strict scrutiny amendments passed in Louisiana and Missouri, convicted felons challenged these state laws that prohibit felons from possessing firearms. At least one lower court found that Louisiana's law prohibiting felons from having guns was indeed unconstitutional. Fortunately, the Supreme Court in Louisiana reversed this ruling. This extreme approach would invite frivolous litigation, undermine decades of case law in the state courts, and put in jeopardy many moderate, common-sense gun laws. Here's what's at stake here in Iowa. Iowa's current laws keep felons from having firearms, keep perpetrators of domestic violence from having firearms, keep guns out of schools, keep restrictions on machine guns and other offensive weapons. These are the types of laws, if challenged under this extreme version of the Second Amendment, which might become declared unconstitutional. In addition, on a personal level, it would also make it nearly impossible for us to ever have red flag laws to protect people who are feeling suicidal. Many know I'm a mental health advocate. That is my biggest fear. There are three things this reckless gun amendment will do. 1, threaten public safety laws by forcing judges to apply the highest judicial standard when analyzing firearm-related laws. 2, invite costly, frivolous lawsuits. And 3, restrict future legislatures from passing any future gun safety legislation. The bottom line is this proposed amendment won't make Iowa safer. I'm here today to ask the board to make a stand for gun safety and pass a resolution in opposition to this dangerous gun amendment, Public Measure 1. Let voters know this proposed amendment is too extreme for our schools and for our families. I've provided a handout with references for the board's convenience to refer to. I'd also share that you could look for any further stats and evidence on everystat.org. It's a wonderful website, well worth taking some time to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our community comment section. Next on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Director Finch. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Kim, we have a motion and a second. I believe we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
Cam, I'm voting aye.
Thank you, Director Easton.
I am too. Voting aye.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next, before we dive into our consent agenda, did any directors have questions or comments as they reviewed the bills for this cycle?
No question.
Okay. Next on our consent agenda, are there any items that directors would like to pull?
I'd like to pull items 8 and 10.
8 and 10? Thank you. Are there any other items? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 8 and 10?
I move we approve the consent agenda items minus 8 and 10.
Is there a second? All right, Kim, there's a motion and a second. I believe we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Okay. That takes us to consent agenda item number 8, Director Finch.
Thank you, President Malone. I pulled it mostly to highlight this wonderful opportunity that our students have in this district to travel. My philosophy about travel is that it's the only money that you spend that makes you richer. And I don't know if you took the time to look through the itinerary, but it's amazing. The other reason that I pulled it was just to see if, we know that there are some kids that can't go on these trips. I know there's fundraising opportunities, but still, a $4,000 trip is quite pricey. And so one of the things that I just wanted to put out there, I don't know if that's something that we can work on, is perhaps improving the opportunities for some of our students to go on these trips. I don't know if there's opportunities for scholarships, perhaps through the foundation. Does anything like that exist? Like a scholarship for?
I don't believe for these trips, we do have those scholarship opportunities set up. Director Finch, the foundation, I don't think there's been any sponsorship of the foundation for these music type opportunities. Usually it is handled through fundraising, and so certainly understand the equity concern that is developed through that. I think somewhat the attempt to do the fundraising is a chance for students that don't have the funds to do that, or the families can't do that, to try to cover those funds. But we know with fundraising that still creates some definite challenges.
Right. I just wanted to put that out there just to see if that might be something that we could work on. But it's a wonderful opportunity.
Jane, could I comment? Ruthina, maybe we could consider this such agenda setting to maybe continue it.
Looking into funding opportunities?
Yes.
We can bring that up at
Yeah.
agenda setting, sure.
I mean, if that's a discussion that board members want to have, we can talk about that at agenda setting.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
So,
Do you have any other comments?
no, I move that we approve item 8 of the consent agenda, City High and West High agreements and Music Celebration International LLC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussions on that item? Okay, hearing none, Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Okay, next, consent agenda item number 10, Director Finch.
This is just a quick question for the operations team on this service agreement. I was reading through the contract and I couldn't tell, is this a yearly agreement or is this for the life of the product?
So this is a yearly agreement. Page 2 has a list of all the services and then the coverage dates, which are roughly mid-September through June, but it's essentially for the year, and then we'll be on an annual cycle after that. Includes both semi-annual and annual inspections, and it aligns with what we do with our UPS equipment in other buildings. It's a contract with the same company that services our other UPSs district-wide.
Okay, I read through the entire agreement and I couldn't find that, so thank you. I move that we approve item 10 on the consent agenda, the Tyler Building UPS maintenance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other further discussions or questions? Okay, Kim, hearing none, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
I'm sorry, it's stuck. Sorry, Kim.
All right. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Okay. Next, we will move on to policy review. Sorry, my computer just blinked out. Okay. P&G met right before tonight's meeting, and we reviewed the 100 series as well as some policy primers, but we'll go into the 100 series. It was just the first review and an opportunity to come before the board to open up conversation. There were some suggested edits, and instead of taking it out of other directors' mouths, I don't know if Director Finch, you would like to highlight one of your suggestions in 101 regarding, or wait, was that in primers? The respect for a third authority versus, or changing it to self and others?
Respect for self and others.
So that was on, and that's going to be a change that we will bring back at the next meeting for folks to see. And if you wanted to hear a detailed conversation, you can listen to the recording of policy and governance. I don't know if other members that was at the table just at 5 o'clock has anything else to add to our discussion about 101? Or Superintendent Degner, you are not a director.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a lot to add other than in the 100 series, we also in P&G talked about investigation protocols, which was a item from last school year that we had started with P&G and then brought back to P&G now a second time. And so there is some policy changes in there relevant to that conversation and discussion. So if you do go back to watch the meeting, Chase and team walk through those suggestions. There's also a new policy 107 that was submitted there as kind of a catch-all for other complaints that may not be covered or may be confusing to people about where they start, so they know they can still bring a complaint forward if they would have one. So those are also incorporated into that 100 series there beyond what would just be the traditional review of those policies.
Great. And I do want to add that although we didn't get into the discussion of the next agenda, I do believe that there'll be conversation or desire from P&G members to talk about perhaps of conflict of interest policy. And I know that's been a discussion for many iterations and cycles of various boards and P&G committees. But that's just throwing that out there that I believe that might be on the October agenda. So keep your eye out open for that. I don't know if you guys wanted to add anything more to policy primers, Chase, Superintendent Degner, or any other P&G members? Okay, I see the head nods, so we're just going to keep on moving.
Ruthina, yeah. Just talking about the review of these policies in general, I really struggle with trying to figure out which policy I would follow if I had a complaint. And to me, asking students, staff, community, parents, who have something that they're dissatisfied with, to look at these policies and decide which one to actually bring a complaint under, is not a really service-friendly step for us to be taking, I guess I would say. So I don't know if something could be done with the flow chart or some.
You might want to look at the meeting from today. It actually was something that our admin worked on, and I'm impressed. So take a look at those sections that were addressed in the P&G meeting today, and it actually might answer your issue.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that I think the admin team has done some changes, especially on the human resources page, that they highlighted a drop down, well, on the main page of the website for the school district. On the left-hand side, it says filing a complaint. So it's super easy that now when you click on that, it takes you directly to a page that says filing a complaint. And I don't know if, perhaps if you take a look at that and there's some questions or concerns, come to the next P&G meeting. But I think those changes is making it a lot easier for the common lay student to, it's simple, file a complaint, you click on that, and it walks you through those steps. And we're going to put that at the bottom of the school board page to allow for folks to have that information there, that they go navigate there, because most of the time that's where people navigate, and they click on filing a complaint, and it will take them there. So they won't have to read through all the policies to figure it out. We're making it really easy for them to file a complaint.
Okay,
Is it-
I'll take a look at it. But
I think you're exactly right, Charlie. That's the problem. They shouldn't even have to know which complaint to start with, right? What we need to get them in touch with is the appropriate people and get the information. And so that was that 107 I was referencing, which is really, basically, if you have a complaint, you can file it, right? You don't have to necessarily know which exact policy. That's our job, to help attach it to and anchor it to. And so I think all these things people have shared were some of the in-depth conversation we had around that, because we don't want them worried about, are they in the right policy or not. That's our job, to get them there. The important people is, do they know who Eric, Janet, Laura are, to start with, on some of those issues for different reasons.
okay, thank you. That's
Great.
helpful, Marie.
Good. Next, we'll move on to our discussion items, unless there's, nope, nobody. Okay, we'll move on to discussion items. The ISB Delegate Assembly Rep. And Matt, before we opened it up for anybody want to jump in there and volunteer? I don't know.
That's what I was saying. I think we just need a volunteer to represent us on the School Board Association's Delegate Assembly. That's a position, if I'm correct, Sean held in the past for us. And
he did.
Yes.
And that's mainly, you go, I believe, the day before
the School Board Convention. Yep.
Is actually held, and that's where you participate in voting on the legislative priorities and resolutions with other school board representatives. So I don't know if anybody can volunteer for that.
I think the goal is you'd have to go to the Delegates Assembly.
Yes.
That would be the thing. You got to be there and participate in the meeting. It's a good, I don't think it's a super heavy lift. It's probably one extra meeting. You do get to vote and weigh in. A lot of times, Paul has been our rep for a long time. And I know, last time, some folks had concerns, and it came to a vote about IASB didn't put in a specific number for SSA request.
Yes.
And so there was some discussion about that, and maybe we should have a number, maybe we shouldn't.
And I've served, I think, once or twice, and it's really not a heavy lift. I think the heaviest lift is making sure that your device is fully charged, because they do have you use, they recommend using your smartphone. You can use your computer, but you're in a room full of all the other representatives, and so you're not sitting at a charging station. So I think that's the heaviest lift.
So I did speak to Ruthina about this. I'm willing to do it. JP, I didn't know if you were planning on staying on the UEN thing, because that's the one that is of greater interest to me. But if you're planning on continuing on the UEN one, then obviously I wouldn't be able to do that.
So, yeah, just a little bit how that works. So the UEN steering committee operates on kind of a rolling basis. Sometimes it's a board member, sometimes it's a superintendent. Matt is currently our rep to the UEN because it's Iowa City's turn to have a superintendent and not to have a board member. And I think that's every 2 or 4 years that they just have this sort of, it's just a schedule. And then sometimes districts have board members on that steering committee and sometimes we have superintendents.
Wait, we won't
It's just
have
not our
anyone?
turn to have a board member on the
I did
UEN
not know
steering.
that.
No, I didn't know that. So I'm willing to do the IASB thing because it's legislative and that is something I'd be interested in doing.
Great,
If anyone else wants to, then I don't want to step on toes. I'm happy to do it, though.
That sounds great. I will take that as you volunteering.
I support Maka's self-nomination to be the
All
IASB
right.
delegate.
Second.
We actually don't need that, so,
Because you found a sucker.
yeah, no sucker. Okay, moving on, we're gonna go to community use of land and prairies.
I'm the co-chair apparently. I figured it out, yeah.
Superintendent Degner, who are we kicking it to?
Yep. I was just sharing that I learned that on Friday when I attended the meeting about how that works
right.
exactly.
Oh.
So, yeah, it is the superintendent that's up this time. I think I actually, the co-chair this year and then the chair next year of that. And then after that, I think I roll off and you're right, then it'll be a board member back for Iowa City.
Yeah, and obviously there's gonna, well, the chair situation is just dicey with who that was. But, I got a nice mug.
There you go.
And a
Yeah.
thank you card.
Yeah,
For my
it's
time.
very nice,
But
yeah.
it is, I will say, just because in the past, people floated the idea like, why are we a part of this organization? Both ISB and UAN, and I will say, I find a lot of value in that. I think we have a lot of voice as one of the charter members of the UAN.
Definitely.
I think it is, both of those organizations are voices in the state that amplify our concerns that are specific to districts like us. And so I just will always be an advocate for us to continue our membership in both the UAN and IASB.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you both.
Yeah, so our next item is about community use and our prairies. And so you have Director Barnes and Ben Grimm here to speak with you this evening about, this kind of started, I think Director Finch had asked about prairies, and then Director Clausen had kind of talked more broadly about community use. So we tried to pair both of those here this evening a little bit to talk about progress or kind of just our approach in both of those areas. And then, of course, open to your feedback and questions you might have. But with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks. Good evening. Thanks for this. We appreciate anytime you want us to talk. We like to brag on our grounds. Before we get going, I just want everybody to remember Ben Grimm is, the grounds manager, but he's also sustainability, IPM. He's part of our climate action plan. So he's part-time. He oversees 9 guys that actually we have up to 620 acres now. So it's a lot of ground, very little crew in that. But I'll touch on the outdoor facility that JP brought up, and I'm not really sure exactly what you're after. But right now, the athletic fields, we have agreements with Corville, North Liberty youth leagues. The baseball. We host various camps. Iowa City, we have kickers at all of our schools practicing all the time after schools. We have C-High has had movie nights on the football scoreboard down there. And that doesn't include just the general playing on the playgrounds, the families, the picnicking, sledding at Longfellow. We Ben this year is it's the Gaga pit, or it's the Gaga ball. I call it a pit. It looks like hockey where you jump over the boards in and out. We have those all over, and over at the tennis courts over Hoover, we actually almost looks like a Gaga retention area where they can all sled down together and that. So not only do that, one thing Ben is very good at is Ben, he has to, for PE and for recess, we had to have X amount of green space. So as he starts talking about this, everything is all calculated, how much we have to have in that. And so with that, then we also have our science projects, the 4th of July celebration at Coralville, Ragbri. They're hoping to get that back next year. Is a word that we're starting to hear in that. So they use that. All the Coralville schools are used for that. We have the trail connections for bike trails. I will be up front, we are trying not to have them go through the schools. We're trying to have them on the outside the fence, because during the day, we do not want people riding our bikes. The only time we're not really promoting our grounds are during school hours. And that's because whether it's preschools or anything, we would like to keep our grounds secure. So that's the only time we are not really promoting that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ben with the Prairies.
Awesome. So to really explain Prairies in a really kind of comprehensive way, I got to kind of explain how we view grounds and how we break grounds down into small digestible segments and that. Within the grounds department, we kind of separate things hardscape from softscape. So today we're talking about softscape, which is all your plant material and stuff. We categorize grounds into a whole series of different categories. And this is really kind of meant to be an example. So like our turf is broken down into A, B, C, D areas. Our ornamental gardens are broken down into A, B, C, D areas. So an A area would be like your high-end athletic field. That's a very intense maintenance program. Whereas your D areas are kind of those non-functional areas. So if you can imagine hillsides or kind of back behind a football stadium somewhere. And to put it into perspective, our A areas will have a very frequent mowing schedule, whereas our D areas might only get mowed as much as once every 30 days or so, depending on the growth of the plants. We also have a larger group of conservation areas, and we kind of group all those kind of environmental areas together, so things like prairies and wetlands and woodlands and things of that nature. Now, as I go through these slides and I start talking about prairies, I'm actually kind of grouping no-mow prairies and wetlands together, because for simplicity's sake, it's just easier to think of them as the same. They kind of have the same maintenance programs in that. We also have bioretention areas that are actually being installed at all the schools. It's new city codes in each of the cities that we actually have to create these and contain the water that falls on site as we add more impermeable surfaces in that. So the Prairie Initiative really started back in 2013, and that was really to take those non-functional kind of D areas that really aren't serving a purpose and convert them over to prairies. And there's a whole number of reasons, and I'll kind of get into those a little bit later. Currently, the district has between 20 and 25 acres of prairie. It's a very hard number to nail down because, for example, North Central, we had prairie areas, but during F&P 1.0, we had to convert a prairie over into a practice area because we needed the old practice field as a laydown area. And then we went in and we established more prairie on the east side of that. Well, that's now become a bioretention area as well as a fire lane. So the numbers are very fluid and constantly changing. But since 2013, we've actually gone through and renovated all the prairies that were in the district, so about 15 acres, and we've established about 8 new acres of prairie throughout the district. Estimates, we would say somewhere between 50 and 60 acres of area could be converted over to prairie if we're trying to get the actual max capacity that we possibly could. But that's a very slow and steady process where we're kind of converting 1 acre at a time over to prairie, a very calculated approach. So when you're talking about prairies, you're talking about bioretention, you're talking about wetlands, no-mow, nearly every single school and building has some sort of prairie retention, conservation thing going on. And that's not grouping woodlands in there. That's kind of a separate entity. So there's very few that actually don't. So if you think of like Man, for example, it'd be very hard to have something in there, although there is water retention mechanically in there. So outdoor facility usage, most of our prairies are usable educational spaces. We view them as such. I'd be hard pressed to even name a prairie that isn't used in some sort of educational method or used within education. Sorry, I lost the words there. But they do everything from insect hotels to certified monarch way station, seed collection, plant identification. They will look at, the high schools look at like the density of the prairie and the diversity of the prairies that are actually at their schools. So it's actually, they're actually used quite a bit within the district. And they're actually one of the #1 requested grounds is actually to expand the prairies at all the schools. The prairies, just like the rest of the grounds, are open to the public and off school days or off school hours. And you will see people wandering through the prairies, community members. For establishment, there is a process that we've kind of developed. We do put signage up the second we're looking at converting a prairie over. Depending on the scope of that prairie, the location of that prairie, we will have some community outreach where we'll meet with community members to get feedback from them and kind of explain the process of what to expect. The establishment period for our prairies is about 3 to 5 years, which is a very long establishment period. And I'll kind of go into those details in a little bit. We primarily install short grass prairies, so grass prairies that really don't get above waist height. And there's some safety reasons and logic as to why we actually do that. Our prairies, we actually work with a team of advisors. So whenever we're trying to change like a large environment, whether it's going in, working within like our woodlands and trying to do some woodland restoration, it's really kind of a team effort where we bring people in from the city, we bring in Iowa DNR people, Kirkwood Parks and Natural Resource professors, and really kind of get feedback on the latest technology, the latest methods for actually establishing those or renovating those, and so on. So prairies, there's a lot of pros and cons. A lot of the pros and cons I have on here, some of them are scientific, some of them are kind of the feedback that we get from different community members. So some of those scientific pros would be CO2 reduction and sequestration. Moving the CO2 out of the atmosphere and back into the soil. Obviously, there's the outdoor learning environments that are associated with it. There is some cost savings associated with prairies, but because of this being a school district, it's not felt as much as if you were doing 200 acres of prairie, so it is somewhat minimal. There's a lot of water conservation stuff associated with it, with cleaning water as it goes down the aquifers, forcing the water to go down to the earth versus running off and sheeting off the ground. The cons, a number of these should really have question marks behind it, in my opinion. There's a number of community members that believe that it decreases aesthetics. So some people are very pleased with prairies and like to see prairies and think they're beautiful. There's a lot of people that don't. They want that very manicured, perfect looking lawn that's actually out there. Some people are concerned with higher number of bees associated with prairies and all the pollinator plants are in there. Again, is that really a con if it's helping the environment? So kind of open to interpretation. There is a potential for fire hazards, and that's a very real potential. If you've ever been around a prairie burn, you can see how quickly those can actually catch on fire and move, and so that's one of those reasons why we go with the short grass prairie, so it's not, prairie grass that's 7-8 foot tall that's actually catching on fire. And it does actually increase manual labor for grounds. So instead of having a seasonal temp, go out and mow a D area once every week or once every couple weeks, we have to go out and manually remove poisonous plants and woody vegetation and things of that nature. So it is a lot more manually intense than just a general turf grass area. So some of those safety concerns mentioned, we do the low growing plant material. We want to be able to see into those prairies and see what's going on as far as human activity, as far as students if they were to wander off and into a prairie and whatnot. Animal activity that might be going on. Obviously, we want to make sure that if one of these does catch on fire, it's minimum risk to anybody. And so what we do is we actually do manual mowing as opposed to prairie burns, which is what is common within the industry in a situation where there is a safety element associated with it. We do have concerns for ticks. And so what we do is we do a drop cloth test where we actually drag a cloth through the edges of prairies and pick up as many ticks off that cloth as possible to monitor our tick populations in and around the playgrounds. And then depending on the type of ticks that we pick up, we'll actually pull off certain ones and send those into Iowa State to make sure that there's no Lyme disease. There you go, sorry. So some of the challenges associated with prairies, I think most people realize that we have a pretty strict integrated pest management program where we're trying to minimize pesticide usage. Prairies, once established, use virtually no pesticides. During that establishment period, The standard is to actually use pesticides during the establishment, which would be 1 or 2 applications of a broad spectrum pesticide that would kill off all the existing vegetation. Turf grass, which is what most people are used to, is a very aggressive growing plant, and there's a reason why we actually use that in most of our landscapes and everything. But it's very hard to seed prairie in there and get prairie to actually establish when there's already turf grass established in there. Since, well, as far back as I can remember, we have not been using pesticides in that manner to actually establish prairies, so it draws out that process. It's a lot harder to actually establish prairies. You know, some experts would argue that you couldn't actually establish prairies without killing off that actual turf grass. So we've experimented with a number of different methods to get prairies established, and we've had mixed results during that process, and you can expect that. But that's why we've kind of narrowed it down to where we're only kind of expanding by an acre a year, because it's more controllable. We have the resources to try to control that kind of situation, as opposed to trying to do 10 acres a year and try to get through that 50 to 60 acres in a span of 5 years. So another challenge is community perception of prairies. Again, some people love them, some people don't love them in any sort of capacity and don't want to see them around. So there is always that communication going back and forth with community members on the prairies. A large percent of the prairies, or community members, like I said, want to see that fine grass in there. So this is a project that's going on right now where we're trying to convert a large turf area, which is technically a bioretention area for the neighbors out at Weber. And so you can see when we go into establish a prairie, there's a lot of things that we need to consider. We need to consider setbacks for city code from property lines. We need to consider proximity to schools, proximity to playgrounds, so we don't have students wandering off into those. But we also want to incorporate things like the tree groves in there, walkable space, so the students can actually wander down in there. In the case of Weber, the students are actually helping us plant that prairie. So they planted seed last year, and I think the plan is to plant seed again this year. And so these prairies are never like this solid mass of prairie for acres and acres. It's really broken up so that people can still use that space as much as possible. And a lot of the space that's getting converted over again is going to be like those hillsides and not necessarily those flat, usable spaces in that. So Weber, what we're shooting for is something more like an oak savanna. So there is a lot of established oak trees there that we don't want to take down and replace with prairie. We want to kind of incorporate that prairie in with those oak trees as much as we possibly can. So, questions?
Great presentation. That was really good. Super interesting. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I really appreciate getting into the weeds on this. But it is helpful just to know how much goes into it. I think that's good for the community, for myself. And I'll just be straight up. The front lawn at West, okay. I'll be honest, like Prairie, I think if you were to do Prairie there, I think the cons you listed about different people's opinions of aesthetics, the difficulty of establishing it. So that's why I brought up the community use piece. And I love what we do with our playgrounds. And I just think when we have, because that right now I would say that area is not used at all. It's mowed and it's there for looks, but that's so when we think about, and again, I don't want to add a lot of maintenance, right? We don't want our costs to go up, but that's why something like a trail or a small park, or it'd actually be a pretty big park, and not with the playground equipment and that sort of a thing, but just a community use area. But that's the one, every time I drive by, I'm like, man, we're mowing a lot of lawn there, and what's it for? Like, what's the point? And I think originally, if I'm not wrong, the original plan was to buy that much land because you could plop an elementary school right in front of the school, and I don't think that's I don't think we want to do that at this point. But, so that's why I kind of brought up, because we had a suggestion, hey, turn it into Prairie. And to me, and I've talked with community members, I don't know if it's as simple as turn that whole front lawn into Prairie for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. And I think then there could, maybe if we did want that space more available to the public and not during school hours, we could do other things with it to make it more usable and community friendly. So that's specifically why I entered that into the conversation.
So I do have some comments on that one. So that one's been on the docket for a long time to convert to Prairie. We're currently working with the new AD over there as well as the cross-country coaches because we're trying to bring cross-country back over to West High as far as practices and meets. And so as we have talked about that Prairie in the past, it's a question of laying it out in a way that it could still be used as cross-country and still running cross-country in there. So it'd end up being some sort of patchwork. So it is on the plans to do that. We're looking at bringing cross-country practices back in-house for fall of 2023. So. Yeah. So there could be the potential for outdoor classroom space out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's perfect. And frankly, what you said about Oak Savannah makes a lot more sense to me, just knowing our actual landscape around here is really more Oak Savannah than Prairie originally. So yeah, I appreciate that feedback. And to me, that's one of the thoughts. I'm like, cross-country track. So very good to hear. Thanks.
Ben, thank you so much for this. I learned so much. I had no idea that there was this much involved. I love the fact that you have students involved with the Weber project, with the seeds. The idea with the cross-country course and the Prairie together, that would be amazing. And I know since I'm not sure if this is actually still the case, but West kind of lost their practice area at Ashton. They were practicing over there, and then perhaps they're not able to practice there anymore. So it's kind of an opportunity for us, I think. And I think, you know, the beauty of the Prairie, I think that's in the mindset, and that's something that can evolve for people, how they view whether or not a prairie is beautiful or not. But anyway, thank you for this, and I'm happy to hear that this is something that we're going to work on in the future at that front lawn at West, some sort of combined cross-country, prairie, outdoor classroom situation.
Yeah, I just want to concur. Thank you so much because it was very informative and learned a lot. Especially, it was interesting to see the aspect of bees being under the con section since they are facing extinction. If you ask certain people that maybe we want to create habitats for them to thrive, but I found it very interesting and informative, so thank you. Are there any further questions or points of discussion for them?
I just wanted to pick up on the Weber conversion or establishment that's being worked out. A really good plan there, in my view, anyway. Can you just talk very briefly about the community input you've been able to work on and with that conversion?
Sure. So we worked with the group. We worked with Chase and Kristen Peterson, Jeff and I did, and we had a Zoom meeting where we kind of went over the layout and what we were trying to achieve, and kind of that process of what's year one look like, what's year two, what's year three, and on down the line. And then we accepted feedback and answered questions associated with the Prairies within that meeting. So.
And the staff was supportive of the conversion?
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Charlie, the piece that I would add on that is whether it's prairie or community use or fences, whenever we get community feedback, everyone has a different perspective. And so they like prairie, but they don't want it to impact what's on the other side of their lawn. And of course, the weeds and the things that they think are associated with it, they don't want that to creep onto their property. And so the setback piece is really important. The aesthetic piece is really important because we want to be good neighbors, not only with our prairie sections, but again, it goes back to fences and how we keep our safety, but then we have to balance that against community use and how do we make sure that they're accessible, and when we balance those pieces. And I think Ben and Jeff did a great job of trying to articulate all of those different factors that go into these decisions when we're talking about our outdoor spaces. And so it truly is a balance, and not just looking at the school, but at the community, how we make it educational use and how it impacts the overall community And so what you caught Ben say is that we haven't done this in just one area, that it's across all of the buildings in the district because of that important piece and how it plays out to it. And of course, a tie to FMP 2.0 and the outdoor classroom space. And so this work is already in progress as we go ahead and look at further incorporating that into the learning that's taking place.
Great, thanks, Chase. It's a good, really good and persuasive overview. And I actually have thought that the development of the prairie areas at Weber, the planned expansions, are actually well thought out and could easily be presented to the community in a way that would garner their support.
Absolutely.
I would just also call out that I'm thinking of New Hoover and Alexander. If you don't have kids there, you don't go to those schools as much, you see there's a lot of open space. And New Hoover is the one that I see every day. And once that road's finished, you're going to have a lot of opportunity to figure out what you want to do with that. But I would be remiss not to mention it since, you know, I'm on the PTO and they talk about it all the time. So it is something to think about because that's a very dangerous road that it's on, and we're trying to figure out how to have community access to it and student access to the area, the property, but not to the Newport Road, right? It's Newport, right? Isn't that the name of the road that's closed? What's the road that's closed?
American Legion.
American Legion, sorry. Yeah, so once that opens up, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for you guys to work some magic out there.
Thank you.
As you say, I think Prairie is beautiful and I like the bees. That's it.
There we go. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Next on the agenda.
Some of us don't like mowing, you know. So.
Next on the agenda, we will discuss Clash at Kinnick. The
Sure.
update.
So we had just wanted to follow up with you guys and give you an update about that experience we were able to provide to our students, not only from the football game, but the dance teams, the bands, the cheerleaders, all that were able to be affiliated with that. And I know a lot of you spent some time there that evening, either working in a concession stand or taking in the game or supporting your students in their different activities. But we were able to generate almost $70,000 worth of ticket sales through that experience, and so we felt really good about that's a positive for the district, and those funds and those revenues will go to the district activity account, and then we'll actually disperse those between all three of our comprehensive high schools. So we felt that was an important trend to start, and that as we continue this experience, as we're hopeful to do, that we'll take that same approach. So we wanted to make sure that we're all inclusive in that, and that all the student activity accounts benefited from that unique experience. Another fun thing that came from the event is we almost raised closer to $4,000, $4,270 funds for the University of Iowa Children's Hospital through the T-shirt sales that we did leading up to the game. Concession-wise, the City High Booster Club and Liberty High After Prom primarily staffed those concession stands. We're estimating the revenues from those between about $5,000 and $7,000. We're not quite sure on the final total of that, so please don't quote me on that, but that's kind of our best guess at this point. We're also still waiting from the bill from the University of Iowa to do this, and so as you know now, they've hit prime football season, right? We're all kind of Hawkeye fans in one way, shape, or form, or at least aware of what's going on. So they had the 3 home games, which has also slowed down our ability to have a debrief meeting with them. But we're looking forward to doing that here in the future and talking about what went well, what we need to improve on in the future. But just very thankful to Athletic Director Bart over there and his team for making this a possibility for our kids. Thankful to our team that spent the time and energy to pull this together, and for the high schools and all the people that either volunteered or supported the effort. So overall, I think a good win for the district in that aspect. If you were there that evening, it seemed like the whole side of Kinnick Stadium was filled up, which, you know, my first concern was, okay, I don't want the kids playing in an empty Kinnick Stadium. What's that going to feel like? And I think it was one of the coolest experiences I've been a part of in public ed, and not just from the aspect that it was a football game. I mean, just the whole inclusive event environment, and coming back from 2 years of dealing with COVID regulations and all of that, it just felt like a really, really positive way to start the year. So a lot of good vibes from that evening.
I have a question about, because I think people ask me this, how does the Student Activity Fund work? I have no idea.
Sure. Les, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sorry, I mean, just basic, I don't know anything about how it works.
It's really just what it's entitled, student activities. So it's all those activities for our students, whether that's athletics, whether that's extracurricular music, like show choir, for example, the debate, drama clubs, and all of those after-school clubs that you have, math club, chess club, Lego club at the elementary schools or something like that. So it's that whole range of activities that we provide for the students to engage them. And not every student is a football player, not every student is a band student. So it's all those other opportunities that we can afford to those students. And we also do have, as part of the negotiated agreements, various stipends that go to teachers to be the sponsors for those organizations. So they are all supervised in one way or another and staffed when those students are doing those activities as well.
That's how we create some equity and experience, right? Because if football just kept all the football gate, then we would have a problem, right? And so that's why it goes that student activity account, and then we're able to support those different activities at those different levels, like Les explained.
Do people ask, I don't understand how it works, do then the different activity groups come to the district, or is that something that's figured out in advance? I don't understand how you figure out who gets what. People are going to ask me, and I don't know how that, like, does the Lego team come to the district and say, we need 3,000 new Legos?
Most of the clubs in those activities either have small dues that the members kind of pay to do that, or they do fundraising. You see the car washes around town that are done by some of the clubs or some of the teams support some of those things in various fundraising opportunities that they do as well. And so we do have a fundraising process that they go through to do that when they have those activities. But so many of those smaller activities are, they support with some of those fundraising things.
I think you're asking a little different. Yeah. And the basics of it would be we give a district allocation to the buildings that then support those activities. So like Les is talking about, for those different activities that we stand up, we know that they're going to need so many funds to support that, right? And so there's different things we move into the student activity accounts that the district then has to pay for, which means a bigger allocation out to the buildings potentially. But that's where that gets determined. And then building principals are responsible for that budget and the financial stewardship of that at their building level for their activities. So it's really lesson team working through then, okay, what does that look like out to all of our campuses? What is the district revenue on that student activity fund? And then how do we get that back out to the buildings, to those student activities?
Okay, that's what I needed to understand better.
I will say that the Clash got a lot of other folks in the community talking. I have heard from several other Johnson County schools on how do we get in on this. So I think it's great that we were the first ones to start this precedent, and we might have folks reaching out asking, can we play one of your schools if somehow or another we got, which I told them to reach out to you guys. I wasn't sure how that all transpired, but I highly doubt that the university entered an exclusive deal with ICCSD.
They did not, and we would love that, right? And while we do think it was a positive experience, and our initial feedback from the university is they thought it was a positive experience, we are going to debrief and start kind of talking about what does this look in the immediate future and in the long-range future. And so there's nothing set in stone that we're going to even have a clash next year.
Right.
While we want to continue that relationship,
Yeah.
and we think the university does too, we don't want to get ahead of them. As Matt mentioned, athletics was great, and we were guests there. And so we're just looking to how we can for that relationship and continue that. But we don't want to put the cart in front of the horse on that piece. But yeah, I think that we would gladly welcome invitations to take our teams back.
Absolutely, and that's what I shared and said, and was like, nope, it's all about being community-oriented and working together. I don't know.
I'm really happy to hear that all 3 high schools are going to benefit from this. It really did feel like a district-wide event, and we all coming together, and so it's nice to hear.
Yeah, great.
And Matt, I have to say that I'm suitably chagrined and on the financial outcome, since I expressed at this table some suspicion earlier. So I'm
In your face.
yes, that's right.
All right, then,
Bold.
with that.
Well, so real quick, though, we
Go
can talk about this. I will not miss an opportunity to plug that we have some, and we're very happy for our partnership with Kinnick, but we also know that only 2 schools can play at a time, and so the next thing on the horizon to continue those partnerships is to turn the page now to look at the winter, and something we're exploring with our friends at Extreme Arena and the opportunity for a basketball game. And
nice.
including a couple other teams. And so, again, we don't want to, Jane, as you said, I mean, you didn't express it this way, but right, to make sure that we're looking at all of our different teams and looking to continue to leverage and partner with the different community organizations to do that. So we're hopeful that these type of events will continue for a variety of our students, not just those involved in fall sports, but looking to expand our partnerships across the region in those types of areas.
Well, that's great news. I look forward to hearing, I'm sure as the rest of the board members, more information about that. Next on the agenda is our legislative priorities. So typically, we receive an email reminding us to do these, but somehow or another, Kim was excluded from that email list this year, and so we only just recently got an email saying, hey, Iowa City, where's your resolutions? So fortunately, we don't have a whole lot of time because we have to come to a decision tonight. And I'm going to have to toggle between the agenda because I can't open the attachment. Hopefully, can anybody else see it? Okay, so it wasn't just me, thankfully. So, Kim, let's see, how can we do this?
Yeah, something's odd on board docs, Kim. We noticed that earlier, and I forgot to say something to you, but we can't get the.
I
it
saw
was
it
spinning
earlier.
this afternoon.
Well, Ruthina just brought it to my attention. I can open it on mine, but I can actually put it on a flash drive and we can pull it up on the
Okay.
computer. If that's
Great.
helpful, that'll
Or will
be
it just pull up on this one if I switch over?
You know, while
But
they're,
also, I will go ahead and forward it as an email to folks, if that's sometimes easier to read. Yeah, I can open that, but the problem is, and I saw the priorities on the agenda earlier today, but for some reason, looking ahead on the agenda right now, it will not open. It shows the icon that something is there, but we can't open it.
Yep.
So as we are working to get that document in front of us and raised.
I can just say, you know, comment a little, like in the past, our priors have very closely mirrored IASB policies. You know, some you know, SSA, an adequate SSA amount, and we usually have put a percentage in there, and we have reasoning for those. I don't think a lot of that has changed as far as that. I think last year we talked about mental health in schools was a thing. You know, we're probably one of the only districts that has included in the past a restoration of Chapter 20 as a priority. You know, the bill that gutted kind of public sector union bargaining, that was not an IASB thing or a UEN thing. And IASB and UEN are also pretty tight, usually with these legislative priorities, just as a place to have a conversation.
Right. And so the way the process is supposed to work is that we look at the legislative resolutions and select our top 4 priorities, that then Kim completes the survey for us and submit those top 4. So with that, I emailed this document that Kim is bringing up for the public to view, but I also emailed it to the board. So if you wanted to pull it up from your email account, you can do that, and you'll see all the resolutions. We can start a conversation on where people are with some of the ones that they would like us to select. So the floor is open if anybody.
I'll say, I think we did this last year and the year before, but I would be a fan of preschool. I always am a fan of preschool. I always bring that up, so wouldn't want to disappoint my other directors.
Thank you, Vice President Williams. I think preschool, especially with our wraparound care program that we are seeing in 4 pilot schools right now, may be a good priority to select, but we can definitely continue the conversation on some other ones that people would like to see.
Again, they're all good. It's always hard to narrow them down. mental health, though, I just think, just the need is so great, and that's, some of my thinking around this is strategic, kind of trying to understand what could happen, and mental health is one of those issues that I know it gets political, but certainly that cuts across all political barriers, and so I do think we've seen support for mental health no matter who's in charge of the legislature in Des Moines, and so the more we can add our voice to that, because the need is so tremendous.
Yeah.
And along with Lisa, I also, preschool is just so important.
I agree, mental health is an important aspect of what we should be focusing on as a district. Are there some other suggestions?
SSA.
There
Right.
we go.
Do you want the numbers for these, or?
That's number 20. Oh, yeah, I got it, yeah.
Got it? Okay.
Yep.
What is it? 21?
School
Number 20.
supplemental state aid,
20.
number 20. So
Do we do 4?
we select our top 4. So this first round, we don't have to limit to 4. If we want to just have a open discussion and then maybe narrow it down to 4, I don't want to limit the discussion.
Right.
Well, I don't know if we can ask for Brady's input, but I always like hearing from ISEA as to, and I don't know if you have it in front of you, Brady, since it's not on board docs. I could probably forward the email to you real quick, but I'd be interested in what ISEA had targeted as some of their priorities.
Well, I will say that certainly CEA and ISEA were, supportive of our call to restore Chapter 20. And again, I think we did that, that's how we feel in this school district. And, I just think our example of our really strong relationship with our association shows what can be done. And we've, as a district, we've maintained, we could kind of go along with the law and just not negotiate any of this stuff or even talk about it. Some of the stuff we can't negotiate, but we've maintained that relationship and we've maintained that contract, right? Because I just think it's who we are as a community and who we are as a district.
Yeah.
And so, and if folks want to entertain that, again, that one's not as much strategic as just a statement of values, perhaps.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Vice President Williams and Director Clausen, for those statements. I don't see the whole list, but I will say that it is something that is important to your employee groups. And we have been distinct in that regard. So, I would put a plug in for that. I think when it was scrolling, I saw something about staff retention and recruitment, maybe. And I'm wondering if you wanted to be strategic, if perhaps like rolling it into that. And without seeing the numbers, I think that is something that does make this district, we talk about it being a destination district, and I think that, if you were to try to be strategic while maintaining, we would certainly be appreciative, once again, of you putting that in there to restore Chapter 20 collective bargaining rights, but it might be a way to take a slightly...
Number 16.
Yeah.
Brady, I forwarded you.
Yeah, it's number
great, thank you.
16.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And as Brady was alluding to, there is, I believe, an open field where you can sort of districts can form their own resolution where it could be a combination of the teacher recruitment licensure as well as restoring bargaining rights.
Yeah, because that one's not in this list.
No.
We just came up with that ourselves.
I would be comfortable with doing a hybrid of the teacher recruitment and licensure and the bargaining rights, because they are linked. It'll help teacher recruitment if they have bargaining rights. So,
Okay.
good idea, JP.
So far, we have number 3, preschool, 8, mental health, a hybrid option of number 16 with teacher licensure and bargaining agreement, and number 20, SSA. So I don't know if anybody feels strongly about any other ones, but right now, we do have 4.
Say them again, please, Ruthina.
Number 3, preschool, number 8, mental health. It would be number 16, but a hybrid option that will include restoring Chapter 20. And number 20, SSA, supplemental state aid.
Brady, I meant thank you to you too. I just said JP, but thanks for that idea.
So like JP was talking about, we could, if those are, whatever 4 you land on, you can submit those 4. The other document we had loaded on here were our just flyer that we do for legislative priorities, and we can easily add in that one, or if there's, we can put it on there again for another meeting too, to discuss if there's further items you guys decide or a priority that you want us to communicate for, and that helps us with the UEN to communicate up through that way.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So that's a good point. So this is what we have to submit, but we do have our own document that typically includes more than just the 4. I believe last time we had 6.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, it's a big document. I can't narrow it down
right
now, yeah.
Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
it's okay.
So it's just, we learned of it today and had to get it turned around.
Well, and the thing is that they are all important, but if you look at the last 5 years, what's the top thing we have to focus on? I think we have zeroed in on, because of the board's experience and the admin's experience and our union leaders' experience. That's why we got to these so quickly. There's just glaring issues that we have to protect.
Right.
And then
Great point. Yeah, because even if you, I mean, list or not, right, what are the things you guys would think about, right? It's probably one of those 4 things. Like you said, I think it's pretty easy to jump to those because we talk about those issues pretty regular. Sorry to interrupt you.
And then I think we will add our own, we've talked about that a bit, so we can add to that list for our own advocacy.
Sounds good.
Okay, is everyone okay with that? All right, so thank you, Kim. We will then move on to our action item of the night, which is the resolution to approve request for modified supplemental amounts for special education deficits. So Les, I believe that might be your arena.
Yes, Directors, this is the annual request to present this to the SBRC for their approval at their December meeting. It's a compliance step that the board does have to complete this resolution before they will consider it. But once that's done, this is a must approve by the SBRC as opposed to a shall. So we know that it will be approved once it gets sent down there. So, but it does take your formal action. And I've provided some notes about how the deficit compares to the prior years. And while that's a big number and it has went up regularly, it's important to know that as a leader in the state in terms of our salaries for our teachers, those salaries exceed what allowable growth is each year, so it's harder to narrow that gap, as well as the number of kids served are actually the 2020 counts for special ed in terms of the receipts that are applied against all of those expenditures. So we're really 2 years or a year and a half behind of what we're serving. So it's a complicated formula, but that attributes to some of the reason why there's always that lag.
And this is where I'll make the same comment I make every year. It is a big number, but here's the thing. By law, the federal government is required to pay all of that. They just never have appropriated the money, ever, since the law's been invented. The closest we got was 19% under Obama's big spending plan. That was 19%. And by law, they're required to fund 100%. So they've never followed their own law, which our Congress is really good at. So, and I don't want to, because this is really goes to the federal government. But if you look at that $9 million, that's our deficit, that's coming out of the general fund, and just think how many classroom teachers that, if the feds were kicking in what they're by law required to, that they don't do, I mean, these are the kinds of things that just make real differences. And when they talk about, full funding for special ed, nobody's ever done it. They talk about, because it's a heavy lift. It is expensive because it costs a lot of money to serve kids with needs. And what I'm proud of, that number, is we're a district that serves kids with needs. We do what needs to be done to meet the needs. And it's hard, when we talk about our para shortage, a lot of those paras are going to be special ed paras. A lot of those shortages are in special ed. I'm living that every single day in another district. And it's tough, but without other government entities kicking in, it really puts us in this unfunded mandate position where we have to make these really hard choices, essentially between, say, class size and getting kids the support they actually need because they're entitled to it. So I always point that out. I always vote for this, but I just want to make that point so the public and everybody understands the federal government, by law, their own law, should be paying for 100% of this. And usually they pay about 14, and that leaves us and the state with the rest of that, so.
Great. Thank you, Director Clausen. Are there any other additional comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move we pass a resolution to approve requests for modified supplemental amounts for special education deficit.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any further discussion? Hearing none, Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you, Kim. Next, we're headed to agenda setting. Superintendent Degner, I know, made a request during P&G that I wanted to bring to the board about swapping the Operations Committee meeting and P&G schedule. So we would, Policy and Governance would meet October 11th, and Operations would move to October 25th. I don't know if there's any questions or concerns regarding that. So we'll get that agenda updated for folks to see. If you have any items that you want P&G to discuss outside of the things that I highlighted during the policy review, please let us know, and we'll get that added.
What swap did you want to do? I'm sorry.
What?
Did you say we were going to swap P&G?
She doesn't want to do any swap. We want to do the swap. So
admin.
just for our team members, it would be better if we could switch the committee meetings just on the different Tuesdays. So if we could do P&G first next month and Operations second, that would be helpful. So if we could go before the 25th with Operations and then actually, what is it, the 11th?
Yes, the
for
11th.
P&G, that would be appreciated. So if that works for Operations Committee members, I think it did for Jane and Ruthina when we met in P&G, so.
If that works for me, I'll defer to Mary Kay and Charlie.
Yeah, it works fine for me.
You too, Maka.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
And next, our regular board meeting agenda on the 11th. We have our standing items listed.
I'm sorry, my microphone makes so much noise.
You wanted, you sound.
I had just something to add
Go
to
ahead,
the
let's,
agenda.
go ahead.
Just that we could further discuss what legislative items we want to add, since
Sure.
we're gearing up for a hot season.
Absolutely, that's a good point.
We might, just at that time, sometimes we talk about a lobby day or, going down to the hill.
Yeah, so all those things.
Yeah, we could definitely have that on there. Superintendent Degner, before we get too far ahead, I didn't know if there was anything admin needed us to take a look at. I know we have our equity update listed.
Yeah, we have our equity update listed. We are going to bring you guys a substantial middle school update sometime this fall, but it won't be at the first October meeting. We're either targeting the second October meeting or the first November meeting. But the team and Lucas has been taken over some of that process since he's gotten here and done a nice job with it. So the team's making some good progress there that we'd like to update you on. But unfortunately, not yet for the next meeting. I was looking through my list. I don't really have anything other right now other than that equity update. We are going to have some big meetings coming up with teacher learning reports and things that way. But I will sure share any team feedback we have in agenda setting, and I'm sure we'll have a couple more items for the agenda, but at this time for tonight, no, I don't have anything.
And I know Director Eastham brought up a question about fundraising, and I think it tied nicely to Director Pilcher-Hyatt inquiry about student activity fees. I don't know if we could, if the team could dive further into that by next meeting or a future meeting.
Oh, sure. Yep. And I think fundraising on a few different angles for us. Probably, I think some of the conversation was about equity in fundraising. There's also some work we'll bring you in P&G just around how fundraising is approved in the district for larger opportunities, what's okay, what's not okay, maybe some suggested change to policy that way. But I understand the kind of where that concern originated tonight, so we can definitely talk about that some more.
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing that could come out of that is it helps the PTOs and PTAs also, because a lot of us are trying to figure out how to have equitable resources for all of those kind of trips and things like that that the foundation can't pay for. So I think that could make a difference for a lot of the kids.
Agreed. This doesn't have to go on next meeting. This is something I talked to Matt about, just an update on the climate action plan.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
An update on the climate action plan.
Great, okay.
So we actually have that scheduled for an upcoming ops meeting.
We'll talk about that one. We probably can just bump that. I mean, we got a couple other things for ops too, and so if there's something we want to move off of ops to a regular meeting, but I'll present, we'll talk an agenda setting, or I'll send you guys a note through the board update about maybe an idea to structure that, but we need to get some of those things to you guys, so whether it's at ops first and then a regular meeting, and you said you were flexible on if it wasn't next meeting, right? Yeah. So maybe we'll do an ops first and then come back too.
Great, are there any additional items or any items that you would all like for us to include in the parking lot? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion is adjourned. Thank you so much, admin team.